when I was younger, I didn't respect the red deck.
All right, so a quick start as we'll get used to seeing here for Martindang. 3 creatures on turn 2 and all of them attacking.
It's quick, very quick. None of them are good enough to hold on to Adisha.
Now it's a race. Oh, what a race here.
And one thing red decks have always done is really punish opponents. There's Exquisite Firecraft, there's game 1!
That game took all of 5 turns in like 2 minutes.
And I think Tom will likely just close the door from here. And that is going to do it. So Tom Ross not messing around, getting game 1 over with in, 45 seconds.
It's knight f6 check, knight f6.
Oh, nice.
He found it. Oh my gosh, out of absolutely nowhere.
I used to think the red deck was cheap, dumb, and simplistic. But the older I get, the more I understand the attitude of those who play with a bunch of basic mountains and a grip full of fire. The grinders who hold nothing back, like Jaws leaping over the Lyon 25. Like Stefan Babcock blowing out his vocal cords singing punk songs in the band Pup. Like those kids in the Sandlot who knew they had one summer to live it up before everyone moved away. This one's for those who go all in. This is the story of Red Deck Wins. It all started with a daydream. Back in 1994, Jay Schneider was sitting in a linear algebra class at Georgia State University, but his mind was elsewhere, wandering, thinking about magic.
I was, at Georgia State taking a linear algebra class, and this is, of course, in my lab while I'm supposed to be listening to my professor who's droning on about some sort of finding the slope of a curve in linear algebra. But the concept was, hey, the same way you can sum the progressions under the slope of a line in this linear algebra stuff the professor's talking about, I could apply this to magic. What if I looked at the progression of mana and what the average mana that I would have per turn was, make a graph, then model against that a creature curve so they lined up 1-to-1, that I could then have this curve of creatures that aligned up with the curve of mana that the deck generates. And as long as I know what the curve of mana is, I know what creatures and spells to put in the deck. Suddenly there was this concept, sort of this mana curve. And I was like, well, that's a good term for it. I'll call it the mana curve.
In 1996, Schneider built a deck for his best friend, Paul Sligh, that applied the mana curve theory to its design. Sligh took it to a Pro Tour qualifier in Atlanta and walked out with second place. The deck surprised everyone in the room. Even the tournament organizer remarked that up till now, I still don't understand how this deck got as far as it did, but it did. The math worked out, I guess. Sly's name spread like wildfire through the tournament scene. He became synonymous with this goofy-looking 61-card mono-red deck, which leveraged cheap creatures and direct damage to control the board. Even though Jay Schneider designed the deck, it was immortalized in Paul's name.
It was the standard to name decks after people.
The Sligh decks carved out their niche in the meta, and with the release of Tempest, they became the most dominant strategy in the block-constructed format. It was here that the skeleton of the original deck took its first major derivation in the hands of Dave Price, who shifted the play away from controlling the board in favor of a full beatdown approach. With a pile of cheap, aggressive creatures and a streamlined mana curve, Price won Pro Tour Los Angeles in 1998 with Dead Guy Red, a deck of his own design. In The Duelist issue number 29, Price wrote a primer on Dead Guy Red, reminding readers that aggressive decks are extremely focused. Their goal is to kill opponents as quickly as possible. He would repeat this line 3 times in the write-up. The DNA of all future beatdown strategies is right here in Price's winning deck list. The numbers are almost comically simple, 16 basic mountains and a playset of nearly everything else. Cursed Scroll was integral to the deck's win condition, but it was the creature suites that carried the load of the damage output. Among them, Jackal Pup is especially representative of the deck's ethos. With 2 power for 1 mana, it was strong on rate, and its drawback shared the same attitude that drew players to the red decks in the first place. That is, winning will hurt, but you can't make omelets without cracking some eggs. At the turn of the century, the aggressive red decks solidified their place in competitive Magic and embraced a new nickname that has endured in the decades since. Red Deck Wins, originally designed by John Ormerod, was made famous by Dan Paskins at the 2000 English National Championship. With a more even distribution between creatures and spells, this deck provided another variant to the Sligh archetype. Cards like Arc Lightning and Shock gave pilots choice in targets between creatures and opponents, and Hammer of Bogarden and Get to Encampment afforded the deck some late-game inevitability. With the inclusion of 3 pillages, this deck could also destroy opponents' lands, a strategy called Ponza that would shoot off as another branch of the Sligh tree. 4 years later, another unexpected red deck took top 8 of Pro Tour Columbus and extended with a list that resembled Paskin's build. Against a field of complex combo decks and fancy blue instants, Shuhei Nakamura registered 25 1-drops. This all but guaranteed a first-turn play in every single game. Red Deck Wins has no time to waste. It fires on all cylinders when its basic mountains enter the battlefield tapped. The same is true of its creatures. As Michael Flores famously noted, the theoretically ideal red deck of 40 bolts and 20 mountains needs 4 turns to kill you dead. 4 turns.
It's time to begin the finals here of our Standard Open in Las Vegas.
Keith Selden on the left here hopes to get to turn 4 alive. He's piloting a blue-white control deck that stabilizes at 4 mana with a timely Supreme Verdict. But Kevin Rand's mountains are entering the battlefield tapped. He's going all in for turn 4, racing to beat the board wipe.
Yeah, be a little quicker to the ground than that. This is a Rakdos Cackler. It's going to be unleashed, so a 2-2 right away. Elspeth's not the ideal draw.
Turn 2. Selden plays Mutavault and passes. Rand attacks with Cackler, then chains together 2 Burning Tree Emissaries into a Fire Fist Striker.
Burning Tree Emissary. Oh boy.
And Kevin's draw is not shabby.
Turn 3. Selden plays Banishing Light to remove one of the red creatures, then passes back to Rand, who immediately starts counting.
See Rand doing the math.
When you see red guy tapping the table like that, it's not a good sign.
You're dead.
It's not a good sign.
With an all-out attack and a blood-rushed Rubble Belt Maka, Selden's life total is cut clean in half. Rand then passes the turn. He's aware of a potential sweeper, which is exactly what Selden draws in Supreme Verdict. But he has no islands to cast it, so he passes back to the red deck. Rand taps 2 mountains for Ash Zealot, and all the creatures turn sideways.
And I think this is a lock.
Titan Strength, that is it. Kevin Rand wins game number 1 in very impressive fashion over Keith Selden.
4 turns. Game 2 went exactly as long. The magic number for the red deck.
That's a shock, and that is going to do it. Mono red aggro in the hands of Kevin Rand is going to defeat Keith Selden, and it's a 3-peat for the Mountains.
Another prototypical feature of the ideal red deck is its cost. Not only do the creatures and spells run a low rate on mana, but most of the cards can be found left over at draft tables and in bargain bins at the local game store. Tom Ross the Boss proved that sometimes you can't buy wins with expensive cardboard. As they say, all that glitters is not gold.
5 damage comes across for Ross. Bertoncini is at 5. He takes a draw. Looks like it was a copy of Xenagos. He's got a lot of expensive cards in his hand. They're worth a lot of value in dollars, but they're not going to get the job done against Ross's sock full of pennies.
Yeah. These sock full of pennies. The garbage bag full of batteries beat down that Tom Ross is bringing to the table here. Just awesome stuff.
Tom Ross took this pile of draft shaft to the SCG Invitational in the summer of 2014. He named the deck after Paul Sligh, and built it by following much the same principles. 17 basic mountains, 31 1-drops, 26 creatures, $60 and a spot in the finals. I love this moment in Game 3 when Ross drops 3 Legion Loyalists into his own Eidolon of the Great Revel.
Tom's going to 6 himself. Gosh, you gotta love that.
Like omelets and eggs, red deck wins when the life totals go down, their own included. After a hammering in Game 2 of the finals, Tom let the Boss Sligh deck rip in Games 3 and 4. You know how this one ends.
Madcap skills swing for 5, and he's gonna go for a kill. It's Rubble Belt Maka and the Titan Strength for the overkill. Tom Ross.
A sea of comments. Madcap skills, Titan Strength, Rubble Belt Maka.
Wins that
45 cents.
Providing the colorful commentary on this match is another legendary pilot of Mono Red. Patrick Sullivan is renowned for his skillful play with decks running Basic Mountain. Perhaps best exemplified in this match against Ross Merriam from the 2012 Legacy Open. After a clean back and forth, the players head into Game 3, where Merriam has a commanding board presence against Sullivan's Grim Lavamancer and an active Sulfuric Vortex. In this spot, Merriam is also winning the life total race.
Patrick's between a rock and a hard place here. That knight, threatening lethal.
After a think, Sullivan goes all in on the gutsiest line, one that only pays off if Merriam makes even the tiniest of errors. Patrick starts by casting Chain Lightning on Aethersworn Canonist, which will let him play more than one spell on his turn. Then he cracks a Scalding Tarn going to 5, and taps 2 for Flame Rift, which deals 4 damage to each player. This puts Patrick at 1 life, but 1 is not none.
Flame Rift.
Gutsy. I like that.
Always gutsy.
Patrick Sullivan is nothing if not gutsy.
Patrick passes the turn back, but on his end step, Merriam has a response. Blink and you'll miss it.
Patrick Flame Rift. Oh my god. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That is how you play a red deck.
Merriam here taps Wasteland and activates Qasali Pridemage to destroy Sulfuric Vortex. In response, Sullivan taps 2 mountains to cast Price of Progress, which deals 2 damage to each player for each non-basic land they control. Ross has 3 non-basics in play, so he takes 6, but he's at 9 life, so Sullivan follows up with Fire Blast, which he casts by sacrificing 2 mountains instead of paying 6 mana. This deals 4 damage to Ross, killing him on the spot and leaving him in total disbelief.
Patrick Sullivan.
That is how you play a red deck. You want to learn how to play a red deck? Study that game. Watch that game once a day until you know how to play a red deck.
The ability to steal a game out of nowhere is another wonderful attribute of a red deck with reach. Playing against these decks is nerve-wracking due to this ability to punish any player who even slightly overextends their advantage. A pair of untapped mountains can sometimes be more threatening than their island counterparts, as Sullivan proved in this match. Wyatt Darby certainly knows all about stealing victories with red deck wins. In Game 5 of the finals of Pro Tour Dominaria, with 50 grand on the line and his back against the wall, Darby defied the advantage bar with a top deck that rivaled the legendary Lightning Helix in the hands of Craig Jones. By all measures, Gonçalo Pinto had his win secured, if not for the aptly named Glorybringer that Darby peeled off the top of his library.
He's going to put him to 1. Wyatt Darby has to find an answer for that Thopter this draw step, or we are done here. Was that a Glorybringer?
That's a Glorybringer.
Oh my goodness.
Who says you have to be at Fenway to watch the fireworks? Listen as LSV and Paul Tian do the quick math.
Blocks Hazoret, he takes 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep. Glorybringer
Are you
kills,
serious?
Glorybringer kills
Are
the Chain
you serious
Whirler.
right now?
That's 11.
Hazoret gets blocked. Kari's Zev is 3. Full Star Mage is 1. Chain Whirler is 3. Glorybringer's 4.
Did he just
That's 11 damage.
The Pro Tour Glorybringer off the top for Wyatt Darby? He's done the math. He sends it in. Cleals the Chain Whirler. All Pinto can do is look at lethal damage. He can't believe that Wyatt Darby just stole the Pro Tour from him.
Gonçalo Pinto here has experienced what we in the business call tough beats. He too was playing a red-based aggro deck, and despite its catchy moniker, there are nonetheless many matches that red deck loses. Sometimes when you go all in, the other guy has the nuts and the glass cannon shatters.
Yeah, so I just got back from the doctor, said that I tore my MCL. It's completely torn, and it's going to take about 6 to 8 months to heal.
In the 2019 Mythic Championship, Li Shiqian ran into a brick wall of mid-range value in both his games in round 4. Knowing nothing about these cards, it's still plain to see how far behind the mono-red deck is, how turn 4 came and went with a blur, how little reach is left when Javier Dominguez has 9 fancy lands and 3 wordy creatures with dice on top of them in play. A quick snapshot of the second feature match in this round between Luis Salvato and Tomoharu Saito paints much the same dismal picture. Red deck loses when your opponents bring paper and you're throwing rock.
All of that hard work from Saito completely reversed by these 2 elementals that are just getting bigger and bigger here. There's the handshake, Luis Salvato picking up the win there.
But there's perhaps no worse feeling than dying by the sword you carry. In general, there are only 2 zones that matter to a red deck player: the battlefield and the graveyard. The red deck argues that the cards in your hand are wasting away in a purgatory of rotting potential energy, that life happens in the red zone and death is the byproduct of time well spent, that cards on the table are worth way more than those in the grip. Nobody knows worse than Yamwing Chun just how important an empty hand is to red deck wins. In the semifinals of Pro Tour Hour of Devastation, Chun squared off against a titan of competitive magic, Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. Each player was piloting a monster of a deck called Ramanop Red, which was among the most powerful iterations of a Paul Sligh beatdown ever seen at the top tables. This deck won with creatures, with burn spells, with planeswalkers. It won early and it won late, due in part to its namesake card. Ramanop Ruins gave Red another axis of attack never seen before, and it was banned in Standard 6 months after the conclusion of this tournament. In the mirror match, though, another card in the deck often proved decisive.
But of course, anything can change, as we've seen in previous matches, if somebody draws a Hazoret.
Game 1 went to Paulo, and Game 2 ended just as decisively with an active Hazoret in play. Facing elimination in Game 3, Chun clawed his way back to victory by doing what Red's done best for almost 30 years and counting.
Oh, here we go. Classic
Upstairs.
mono-red strategies.
Oh, baby.
3 to the dome.
Game 4 played into the mid-range strengths of this deck, ending with an eternalized Earthshaker Kenra bearing a beefy 4 toughness and a timely Collective Defiance to remove Paulo's only blocker. So on to Game 5 we went, anxious to see the comeback kid live the dream and topple a magic god for a spot in the finals. And it was looking good.
Yamwing Chun drew one of the more important cards in the matchup here. Hazoret the Fervent sitting in his hand.
So we're going to see him craft his game plan around that.
After a few trades of creatures and burn spells, we arrive at the most pivotal moment of the match. Chun casts Hazoret and faces a crossroads. With only 8 life and Paulo at 16, he must decide between playing defense and racing.
Oh, is it getting in there?
He's shaking his head. He can't decide. It's such a close decision. He's looking at Hazoret.
Just kidding.
He's looking at Hazoret saying, what would you do?
Then, Chun goes all in.
And he is going to attack.
Oh, and he gets
Hazoret
in.
the Fervent hits the red
Off
star.
to the races.
The turn goes back to Paulo, who follows his main line and chips Chun down to 4. Now everything is lethal, which means Chun's only out is an incendiary flow from the top of the deck. Together with an attack from Hazoret and a Collective Defiance to the face, he'll have exactly 11 damage to kill Paulo and go on to the finals. On his draw step, Chun finds
Incendiary flow? Is it a flow?
Let's see what he's got.
It's a flow!
It is an incendiary flow. Oh my God.
the crowd and the advantage bar go wild. That's lethal, the dream is real. Down goes Paulo. But just as quickly, Chun moves to combat and everything disintegrates.
Look at this.
No, you can't attack. You can't attack. He has only 2 cards in hand.
He can't
Is he in his
attack.
combat step? What's going on? He can't attack. Is he? That cost him the game.
Oh,
that cost him the game.
That could cost Yamwing Chun the game.
Sometimes the omelet comes together, but you drop it on the way back to the dining room table. Magic is a game of minute details and micro advantages. In his excitement, Chun overlooked the critical line of text on Hazoret that says it can't attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. Once again, the hand of red deck wins is a purgatory of rot. Either you play your cards or die holding the hot potato. Chun lost this game a few turns later. When I was younger, I didn't respect the red deck. I used to think it was cheap, dumb, simplistic. But the older I get, the more I understand those who play with fire, who burn out in a vibrant and explosive finale as sulfur hangs in the warm summer air. Red deck wins with alacrity and tact, with clever play and perfect timing, with cheap creatures printed on cheap cardboard and a hasty dragon flying in from the top deck. Red deck wins when everything comes into play tapped, when you do the math on the table, when you turn all your dudes sideways and the board is a mess, and it's backed up by a fiery range of basic mountains.
There's the block.
Red deck wins when you go all in.
There's the match. Yo, Larson is the champion of Pro Tour Magic Origins, and he is super stoked to that.
On a gray Monday morning in October 2015, Aaron Homoki stared down a flight of 25 stairs. After bargaining with security, the French police gave him exactly 1 hour to ollie the set. It's now or never, do or die. His dad was there, a contractor who knew the height and length of stairs in blueprints and in builder's codes, but never from the top of a skateboard. After 12 tries and 12 slams, Jaws rolled down the ledge for lucky 13 and went all in. This episode was sponsored by Card Kingdom and Coalesce Apparel and Design. Pick up some mono red heaters in the Card Kingdom store to support the show, then head to Coalesce for a shirt and a sticker. It was also sponsored by NordVPN. Protect and secure your digital devices with NordVPN by using the link below.